There is a software as a service company that generated over $800 million in revenue last year. They have a sophisticated affiliate program, they have customer support teams, dedicated documentation, and they even offer distinct pricing tiers. They invest millions of dollars in R&D, they run aggressive marketing campaigns, and they compete fiercely for market share. Their business model would make any SaaS founder jealous. 70 to 80% profit margins, recurring revenue, network effects that any startup would kill for. And their product? Ransomware. They are a criminal enterprise, and they're running circles around legitimate software companies when it comes to operational efficiency. This is ransomware as a service. If you think that cybercrime is a bunch of people wearing hoodies and hackers sitting in basements and dark rooms, you're about 10 years out of date. This is industrialized crime. This is modern stuff. This has business development and org charts and KPIs. Well, today we're going to break down exactly how this works. Because if you're building software and architecting systems or making any kind of security decisions, you need to understand the business model of the people that are trying to break into your systems. They're not script kiddies anymore. They are more organized than your competitor and probably more organized than your own company. And that changes everything. All right, so let me explain the business model, because once you understand it, a lot of things about some modern ransomware attacks starts making more sense. So ransomware as a service, RAS, operates on a platform model. Okay, so there are three key players here. First is the developers who maintain and build the ransomware platform. They create this encryption tools, the payment portals, the data leak sites, and all that stuff. Just to clarify exactly what is ransomware, the idea is someone hacks into a company and they silently learn about the infrastructure there, and then they deploy this ransomware, which basically encrypts the systems that prevents access to the people working in that company. Only the person who has hacked in and encrypted it can now decrypt it. Before they encrypt, they steal some data, they encrypt the system, and they leave a ransomware note and says, pay us this much money and we will decrypt it and give you the data back. And as an additional way to blackmail, they have the data that they've stolen. They say, pay us money or we will leak this data into a public site. So this platform, the developers, that's the first key player, right? They build the ransomware platform. They create these tools for encryption. They create portals for making the payment. And they even build the data leak sites where they publish the stolen data if the company doesn't pay. So they've basically built this whole ecosystem, building like the victim communication systems, how you talk to the companies, that they have tracker dashboards, everything. That's the first key player. The second key player are the affiliates. These are folks who execute the attacks. Okay, it's kind of like a franchise model. So you want to attack a company, you go get the platform that's built by the developers and you find targets, you gain access to networks and you deploy the malware, right? So these are affiliates and they're the ones who are doing the actual hacking and finding the vulnerability. That's the second key player. Third key player is what are called initial access brokers. We'll get to them in a minute. So these specialized in just getting into the network and selling that access. So this revenue split is typically 70 to 80% to the affiliates, 20 to 30% to the developers. Think about that for a second. The people doing the actual technical work of breaking into the system get most of the money. The platform gets a cut, but they're not taking the bulk of the amount. They're basically delegating the work. Does this sound familiar? This is exactly how Uber works, or DoorDash works, or any modern platform business, just like legitimate SaaS companies, right? And just like those legitimate SaaS companies, these folks have a different pricing models as well, right? So there is this profit sharing model, which is the most common model. The developer takes around 20 to 40% of each ransom. Some high-end deals go up to 85% for the affiliate if the ransom is over 3 million, right? So they literally negotiate and revenue share based on the size of the deal. That's the first model. The second model is subscription-based. So they pay a monthly fee, anywhere from like $40 to several thousands of dollars, and they get access to the platform and they keep the ransom money themselves. Pay them a monthly fee, get the platform, and whatever you hack, whatever ransom you get, you keep it to yourself. But if you're not able to succeed, you still pay the flat monthly fee. That's a subscription base. And they have a one-time license as well. You just pay once and you get unlimited access. So the platforms themselves are pretty sophisticated. So there are web-based control panels for the affiliates. There are custom payload builders. You can configure ransomware for specific targets. You can do deployment tracking. You have analytics, which shows how the attacks are working. You have automated phishing tools. Some even have AI-powered social engineering frameworks as of this year. And aside from all this, they have customer support for affiliates who need help using the platform. You can create a ticket. They have negotiation call centers. There are trained negotiators whose job is to maximize how much you get the victims to pay. This blows my mind. I mean, have you folks heard about this? I did research about this topic for a different video. There was a vulnerability, there was a password attack, and they got in. And I started looking into these platforms, and this is unbelievable. I was like, why isn't this being talked about more? Let me give you a real example. This platform called Blackhat, they started with 20 to 25% cut for developers. That's apparently pretty standard. But when they saw law enforcement was disrupting some of their competitors, they increased the affiliate share to 90% to get more people to come to them. Okay, so they're competing on compensation like any employer who is trying to attract talent. And this worked until, guess this, they pulled an exit scam and they disappeared with everyone's money. So they scammed the scammers who had registered to use their platform to scam others. That's a different story, but that's one among several other organizations that have come up since then. And here's where it gets really interesting, right? There's this entire supply chain is built around this. I talked about initial access brokers. So they're called IABs. They specialize in just getting into networks, right? They find vulnerable systems and they exploit them, or they guess passwords, they get the credentials and they sell that access. There are some marketplaces on the dark web, so they use that to sell this access. They don't deploy the ransomware themselves. Their job is to just provide the entry point because they don't have time for that. So business is good. Most access sells for like $500 to $3,000. Some large high-value corporate access goes for like $10,000. In 2024, the average was about $2,000. But prices are getting cheaper. 58% of access now costs less than $1,000 because they're not always going for the big ticket items. They're like, any vulnerability, any access is good. And there is competition. There are more IABs, which means more supply. It's economics, right? So the access itself that's being sold is changing. In 2023, most of the access was through remote desktop. In 2024, it switched to VPN, right? 45% VPN versus around 41% remote desktop access, because that's where the targets are now, right? Organizations have hardened remote desktop access, so now attackers have moved to VPN, and the market is adapting. Some IABs even work directly for these RAS groups, as they work as employees or contractors. They get a steady paycheck. This is their job. They do that every day. And this is why the supply chain matters, because this creates specializations, right? IABs focus only on finding vulnerabilities and getting that initial access. That's their expertise. And affiliates focus only on deploying the ransomware and maximizing the ransoms. That's their specialty. And developers maintain the platform and just keep improving the tools, build better and better tools. So no one has to be good at everything. You can be mediocre at hacking, but great at finding vulnerable VPNs and sell that access, and you still make money. So it's a fully functional supply chain, just like a legitimate software distribution. And this also reduces the risk, right? If one part gets caught, the other keeps operating. So it's kind of, the system has built resiliency by design. Now, the question is, how do they find affiliates? This happens through dark web forums. This happens through some Telegram channels. There are invitation-only networks. So some groups reportedly invest about $1 million in recruitment. That's a serious talent acquisition budget. Not many companies have that. So they vet them based on technical skills. They're based on past success, reputation in the underground community. They check for references. They look for track records. And they compete for top talent, man. There's better compensation, better platform features, better support, better infrastructure. If someone's good, they can move up the chain. Because here's the thing about this business model. They need affiliates to make it work. And the best affiliates, therefore, have options. They can choose which platform to use, so everyone else has to compete. And that competition ends up driving innovation further. So you get better tools and better success rates so that they get the better affiliate experience. There was one group that added AI-based phishing, and now like that kind of every other group now started adding it. One group offers better analytics. They're like doing competitive analysis and bringing those features to all the other platforms as well. So it's a competitive market with all of the dynamics that comes with it. Now let's talk about money. This one's hard to wrap your head around, okay? The whole industry, according to my research, is worth around $20 billion, right? To put that into perspective, that's larger than the entire SaaS market was in 2010. Okay, it's a massive, profitable, and industrialized economy. Criminal economy, but economy nonetheless. In 2024, millions of dollars are being spent, right? Victims spent around $813 million in ransom. It's getting a little lesser because law enforcement is trying to take action. It's a little lower than 2023, but it's still over $800 million for 1 year. The median ransom is around $2 million. That's not the high end. That's the median, right? Half of the ransoms are higher than $2 million. The single record payment was $75 million in March of 2024. Someone hacked into some company and got $75 million to get them to unencrypt the stuff that they've encrypted. One attack, 75 million. This has an economic impact, right? So this is not just taking away the company's money, it is also slowing down innovation. It's taking away jobs indirectly because if the company is paying money to these guys, they're not hiring. Of course, you can say, yeah, the CEO gets so much more. It's hardly a blip in their income. Sure, but I'm not arguing for fairness. I'm just saying the reality is that if you have companies paying money, it is going to have an impact. Whether it's right or not, it is going to have an impact on the economy as a whole, on the job market as a whole. I heard in the UK, they're handling about 35 to 40 new cases per week. I couldn't find research on the US and other parts of the world, but this is crazy. 35 to 40 new cases per week. Now, why is it so profitable? I've been thinking about this. First of all, they have very low operational costs, right? A lot of the infrastructure is basically stolen or compromised. They're not paying for cloud bills. They're not paying for AWS instances. They're using compromised cloud accounts. And they have high profit margins for each of these, right? 70 to 80% profit margins are typical. Very low initial costs, right? And it's also scalable. One platform can support hundreds of affiliates running thousands of attacks. So the marginal cost of each attack is almost zero. It approaches zero as you scale up. And we already saw 1/3 of the victim pays. So that's 33% conversion rate. No SaaS company can compete in terms of a revenue model. This is insane. Nothing else can compete. And of course, the payment is all in cryptocurrency, by the way, so it makes it harder to track and seize. And also, of course, the whole payment platform, everything is built by the same people who built this platform. So it's all integrated. The first such platform provider that came to popularity and was in the news was this thing called Black Cat, which I was talking about, right? They were very sophisticated. They created this platform and they had a lot of successful runs. There was this healthcare provider, I think it was called Change Healthcare, that paid about $22 million, ransom $22 million. Yeah, this was in 2024. And they had a lot of success. But then the Black Cat platform creators decided that rather than helping people scam others, why not we scam the people who have given us the money? So here's what they did. They actually posted a fake law enforcement seizure saying that, okay, we've been caught by the law enforcement, and they basically disappeared with like $22 million. They just took the money and vanished. They're supposed to give a cut, right? They didn't give a cut. They got the money, they just took it and they vanished. So the affiliates who did all the work basically got nothing. This is called exit scam. That's the thing about the ecosystem, right? There is no honor among thieves. There's enough money on the table that trust evaporates. So you might wonder like how it even works. But yeah, Black Cat went away and there's now this new thing called Akira. It rose to prominence in the second half of 2024. Company went away. There's an opportunity. There is demand. So Akira came about. And here's what Akira does. They target small to medium business, right? Ransoms in like the $50,000 to $500,000 range. They're not going after massive paydays. They're going for volume and they're going for consistency. And they have this really interesting playbook. It's like a step-by-step guide for affiliates. They're scaling up, okay? They have guides for how to do reconnaissance, how to move laterally, how to find backups, how to deploy the latest payroll. It's like a franchise operating manual, and it lowers the skill barrier. It makes it easy for people with less experience to execute successful attacks, which is necessary if you're scaling up. You can't find a lot of expert hackers, so they have to lower the barrier to entry. So Akira accounts for about 6% of the ransomware claims in 2024. Okay, they're very quiet. They don't show off. They just quietly execute behind the scenes. There's one more that's coming up called Dragon Force. So it's popping up. Okay, when one group gets taken down or exits, the affiliates just migrate to another platform. The ecosystem is resilient. And with 2025, there's integration with AI. AI is everywhere. AI is integrated into ransomware as a service. So they're using AI for phishing, they're using it for social engineering, and this is not like future stuff. This is happening right now, okay? There are attacks that are going on today which use this technology. They have faster attacks, lower scale attacks, and they're scaling up and they're getting more efficient. And 96% of the ransomware attacks now include data exfiltration. What that means is they're not just encrypting your data, they're stealing it first. Because even if you have perfect backups, they can still threaten to leak your data publicly. So you get double extortion. So the model keeps evolving and improving. The thing that scares me is this ransomware ecosystem has achieved something that most of us regular software developers haven't, which is true specialization. Each role focuses on what they're good at, which is division of labor at scale. Compare that to the defenders, who are our routine, regular software developers, right? Most organizations expect one security team to learn to defend against all of this, right? Prevention, detection, response, recovery, vulnerability management, incident response. Everything needs to happen under the same team, and they're actually merging together. So it's not just security team anymore, it's DevOps, DevSecOps, everything gets bundled. So the hackers are moving to specialized fields, whereas we are being generalists. So we are generalists fighting the specialists, and you can't match that kind of specialization as a generalist defender. We have budget constraints, problems with hiring. Most organizations can't afford it. And companies that can afford it don't prioritize it. We as software developers have to do a lot, and we have to generalize, working on legacy infrastructure, whereas those folks are specialists. They are working on the latest tech. They're adapting and evolving really, really quickly. And the thing is, attackers only need one success. Defenders need a 100% success rate. Even if you defend 99% and you lose 1%, you're lost. But attackers only need one success. They can get in and they can create havoc. And that's what happens. So we've talked about what this is, how it works, and at what scale it works, and why it's effective. Now let's talk about what it means for you and me when we're building systems, when we're writing code, and we are making architectural decisions. The old threat model, opportunistic attacks from individual hackers or sophisticated hackers, has now changed. The new threat model is you have to assume that you're facing industrialized attacks, well-funded, specialized adversaries. They have better tools than you think. They'll spend days or weeks scanning everything. They're following playbooks that have been optimized across thousands of attacks. What this means is we have to step up. We can't rely on obscurity. We can't say, oh, I'm a small company, you're too small to be a target. That doesn't work. If there's money, someone will attack, because they're not going after big fish right now. It's scaling up. You can't assume that attacks are unsophisticated. A mediocre hacker using a professional platform is still dangerous. And the way it's scaling, it's almost like a statistical guarantee that as this progresses, every system is going to come under the same highly skilled, highly professional attack playbook. Every system, no matter how small it is. So this is especially true for certain kind of companies that kind of make them a target. So healthcare, logistics, manufacturing, industries that cannot afford downtime, they usually end up paying more because they just want the problem to go away or the company shuts down. Watch my linked video, I put that in the description, about a transport company that's been operating since before World War I. that shut down in a matter of 3 days because of these folks. So companies like that, publicly traded companies or regulated companies, they're more likely to pay to avoid disclosure. We can figure out what that playbook is and implement our security playbook to counter that. It becomes a race against each other, but that's the best we have. They have their playbook, we'll have ours. We need to have good incident response plan. If you can contain and recover quickly, the damage can be limited. But the fact is, authentication is our first line. 80% of the breaches have involved compromised credentials. This is the entry point for RAS software. So we need to have MFAs on everything internet facing. This isn't optional. It's the minimum necessity. Password only authentication is like, forget about it. It's not even there. It's like you have opened the door. And you don't have to implement this yourself. You have established providers who provide this for you. Auth0, Okta, Azure Active Directory, they all exist. They're mature and they're easier than building your own auth. They're going to be much better than the most complex auth system that you're going to build because that's mature. So this is what we have to do, right? Good authentication, network segmentation, principle of least privilege, limit the blast radius. You can't have super privileged accounts for everything. That's once the attacker has that, that's it. Your system is over. And you have to assume breach. Design systems that can survive a partial compromise. Assume that the hacker is already in. What can you do now to make sure that they won't succeed, right? You will get breached. The question is whether your architecture can contain it or not. And so the fact is these RAS groups have better DevOps than many organization has SecOps. They're iterating faster than us defenders are adapting. And they're applying the Silicon Valley efficiency to crime. We need to match their professionalism with our own by treating security as a first-class citizen. The reality is that ransomware isn't going away. It's too profitable, and they're getting more and more of a target with a lot of the vibe-coded, AI-written code that gets deployed to production without any security audit or checks. It's something that all of us have as responsibility as software developers. We may not have the authority to actually implement some of these changes, but we should at least bring it up. We should notice it. We should be educated, call it out. And if the manager says no, sure, it's on them. But it's our responsibility to at least notice and call out and do what we can on our part with whatever limited authority we have to make sure that we are secure. We're keeping our business and our users secure. I don't know what's going to happen to this. This blew my mind when I researched it. I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for this. And if I discover something interesting, I'll bring it to you folks. This has changed how I think about the threat landscape. Fun stuff, huh?